I'm so happy today to have Christine Drazan here. Thanks so much for coming, Christine.
Thanks for having me. Looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
I'm a little bit starstruck because I just have a lot of respect for you, and you're the House Minority Leader. And I had
Yeah,
to look up District 51. Is that your?
that's
Okay,
us. Yeah, that's me.
okay. And just for the viewers, I guess what is that area?
So I represent rural Clackamas County, is how I describe it.
Mhm.
But if you're familiar with the area, it's Canby, the city of Canby, and then you kind of head out into the country a little bit. So I don't have Oregon City proper, but I have all the areas outside Oregon City, and then you go all the way up to Estacada,
Mhm.
and then all the way over to Sandy. And that's the district. So rural areas,
Mhm.
beautiful horse property and forest and farms and rivers. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah. I was looking it up, and it was funny because I had the guy from the North American Bigfoot Center, which is in Boring, but I think
Oh,
that's just
yeah.
outside of your
That is
district.
just outside. Yeah.
Um, Okay, yeah, let's just get right into it. I have a lot of stuff in here I want to get to. I wanted to start with, I know both of these things were kind of happening this week, but I wanted to start with I don't know what you call it. I'm calling it women's fairness and
Yeah.
sporting stuff.
Yeah.
Can you just explain to people what happened this week with that vote and
Yeah. Can I go back a little in time
yeah,
briefly?
yeah.
I have a person in my office who is a high schooler.
Mhm.
And I met her and her family after running for governor. And they were already starting to get involved politically because this high school student had had an experience where her school allowed biological males into the locker room and onto their teams.
Mhm.
And she wasn't comfortable with it. She felt uncomfortable and she wasn't sure when the locker room included biological males or not. And so that got her interested in how do I how do I make myself heard right now? She's
Just do something about
what
it.
do I do about it?
Yeah.
I'm 15 years old.
Mhm.
Like what do I do about this? And and then fast forward to this session, she's been an intern in my office.
Okay.
And so we worked together and proposed legislation which would say girls' sports, female sports are for biological females. And you have an open category for anybody else. Anybody else can compete against anybody else in this open category concept. And also, anyone can compete against biological males, but that biological females get their own space to compete.
Mhm.
And and so this last week, we didn't have any success getting hearing on the legislation. And we've tried letters to OSAA, which is the Oregon Athletic Student Activities
And
Association.
that's high school level,
It's high
right?
school
Yeah.
level, yeah. And they kind of doubled down on their policy. And so it was an opportunity for us to all of the female athletes that have been engaging with us on this issue wanted to have the opportunity to be heard. And so we gave them that platform by doing a thing called a bill pull, which is procedural. It
Yeah.
basically, we had this idea proposed. There's a bill that's sitting in committee, and the majority party didn't allow it to move forward, so it died, or at least the committee closed, so we couldn't act on that bill. But what we had left to do was to make a motion on the floor to just pull it straight to the floor for an immediate vote of the
Mhm.
body. But there's that first step where you have to agree to consider it.
Okay.
And that's the step at which the Democrats voted against it.
I see.
So all the Republicans said, yeah, let's debate this bill. Let's bring this bill to the floor and have this conversation on behalf of these female athletes. And so the Democrats opposed it procedurally, so it never came to a debate.
So that's the first step in just getting it to
Yes.
be considered.
When you go around the committee, there's a procedural step,
Okay.
and that procedural step is where they all voted in lockstep and said no. So,
Yeah, and I just wanted to talk about it because it's really important to me, and I've had other episodes about it on here. And as somebody who has a trans sibling, I just
yeah.
wanted to say that it's like I reckon like to me, it's all about sports fairness, and like this is a family member of mine who broke my collarbone, like body slamming me as
Mm,
a child,
yeah.
and I recognize that now as both adults. like that's the same biological person, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
it blows my mind how people still don't understand that it's all about fairness and it's all about Title IX. And there's
Yeah.
just more and more stuff that we see with the Paris Olympics boxer and all these track events and Riley
Yeah.
Gaines and all this stuff. So it's just super important, and I see it as like a 80-20 issue nationally, and maybe even worse. Like I think most people understand that it's about fairness and
Yeah.
Title IX, and so I'm glad you guys at least tried to,
We tried.
yeah,
We tried. And for the female athletes, I mean, these are women that are dedicated to sport
right,
and they love it and they love to compete and they also love to win. And that the distinction biologically for them is just devastating. It's
right,
hard to overcome. And so, yeah, we just believe that trans athletes, it's important that they have opportunities just like
yeah.
everybody else.
Yeah, that's what I think. Sometimes people think it's like, oh, we're just trying to trash trans people, but it's like, I
No,
think the third league is a common idea. Like
yeah,
it sounds like that was part of that package, but
yeah. We're interested in trying to come to a place where everybody feels supported
mhm.
and everybody gets to compete. Like,
Yeah, it's something I think about a lot up here in Portland because it's like, and I always try to frame it in a way, but it's like, especially in Portland, people get affirmed so much that that starts to affect a lot of other people's rights, and
yeah, yeah,
it's just
yeah,
a common kind of theme up here.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad.
What do you do about that?
There's not much you could do in Portland about that. I just try to bring attention to it and say that it's like, and I try to make this parallel with people too. Like Portland's a really popular area with like personal therapy. People always like go to therapy and all this, and they talk a lot about personal boundaries in therapy. But I see that lack of personal boundaries in a societal level up here in Portland. It's like
Hmm.
we're all for the personal level boundaries, but when it
Mhm.
comes to society, it's just like
Yeah.
anything goes kind
Yeah.
of.
I
So,
want you to act in ways and have the kind of life that I want you to have.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot to kind of unpack there, but I also wanted to talk about. I know this just happened. Stuff changed today with the transportation package,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, that's a hot topic.
and yeah, I was reading about it this week before, and I'm sure you can explain like what changed this morning, but the kind of package level stuff I was reading about this transportation package was just crazy to me. Like it's kind of
It's huge.
huge
It's a big
increases in the
deal.
gas tax. There's
Yeah.
payroll tax. There's registration tax. There's all this stuff involved. So I'm
Mhm.
just curious if you can unpack that for people and maybe what changed today. And
Yeah. Well, structurally, not a lot changed.
okay,
So back in March, there was what they called the framework.
hmm,
And the framework said, here are 12 new taxes or 12 either new or increased taxes. And this allows us to raise just under $2 billion. And with that money, we're going to do everything we've been doing. And you're not going to get a new lane and you're not going to get a new bridge, but we promise to fill potholes and
it's
we promise to keep busing service running.
maintain the status quo, kind
Status
of.
quo.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you're paying an awful lot more for the same. And this proposal added a few technical features. So for people that are truck drivers, they know that they pay the weight mile tax on the roads. Well, this changes the point at which the weight mile, this was in our proposal too. We had a proposal that came out about a month ago, and we just put the bill into the process today, yesterday. Anyway, but if you're a
and
trucker,
that's a
you,
competing bill for
yeah. So it's a bill
to
that does
address the same.
addresses the same problem,
Right,
gets you to status quo, but doesn't raise taxes.
right.
So, but
Because I don't like what's in that other.
well, I don't love it
I'm just
either.
like, there's too much in it. Like it would just drive. I'm always concerned with bringing more people to Oregon, businesses, and just maintaining the people that we have here, keeping them happy. And it just seems bad for all that. So I
Well, the
don't know.
only thing that we had in common was a technical fix for truckers.
Okay,
That's it. That's the same. I think that's one of the few things that's the same.
sure.
Theirs has a 70 cent up to a 70 to 80 cent increase in the gas tax. So the gas tax would be between 70 and 80 cents per gallon, which is mind boggling to me.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And then you have a tax on if you buy a used car, which you don't have right now.
Right, right.
If you buy a new car, if you use the roads, a road user charge. and then also a new tax on an increased tax on registration and title transfer. And so it is an everything, including the kitchen sink kind of proposal for how are we going to raise money. I think that I will call it nickel and diming, legitimately nickel and diming people at every single point of contact
Yeah.
with transportation. You're going to get charged something. That's the proposal.
And anyone who's ever gone and updated the registration knows that that's it's already frustrating at
Yeah.
whatever price it. I can't remember
It's so expensive.
$150, but it's going to
Yes.
go up again if this thing passes.
Yeah. And side note, they also recently passed, this was kind of annoying to me. You used to be able to use all kinds of boats on the water and you wouldn't have to pay a registration fee for it. And then they added in a whole bunch of different kinds of watercraft. Well, and it used to be if your boat was less than 10 feet, you wouldn't have to register that. And they even took that away this session. So I feel like they're just doing taxes and fees on everything that, doesn't move.
Yeah.
It's a lot this session.
Yeah, it's frustrating for me for a couple of reasons. Like I've talked on here about the $1 billion that ODOT
It's
disappeared or
lost.
whatever.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why it's frustrating for me. And also this push to EVs just seems kind of, it's always seemed early to me, but it's just like, I don't think people and Democrats in Salem understand. Even people up here still love their gas cars. Like it's not,
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that is like the open secret.
and it's a lot cheaper for most people, right? It's like, so it just seems, I would say, people think that anti-car kind of ideology is a good thing, but you're also just kind of going after the working class people.
100%.
And it's
100%.
short-sighted.
Yeah, 100%. And I look at it a little bit like we're kind of mandating the 8-track tape. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, we're at the beginning of a progression for technology,
Right.
for what energy is really going to fuel the future and what transportation is really going to look like. And somebody's arbitrarily decided that this is where it stops. And everybody's going to mandate and invest this kind of car. And I feel like this is so early to do that. Like,
Yeah, there's even people up here that have EVs. They'll complain about anytime I leave Portland, there's no charging.
yeah,
The grid's not ready. There's all these problems with it.
yeah.
And the 8-track makes sense. It's like an early
Well, it's so early.
prototype of
Yeah,
what it could be.
yeah, it's so early to mandate.
Yeah.
I
It also wears the roads down because they're heavier cars.
heavier than everything else. Yeah. And don't even think about buses. Like the numbers for electric buses is so expensive and there's nobody almost in that bus. And just the wear and tear on the roads for those buses. And EVs don't pay anything. They can voluntarily participate in a road user fee. That's a per mile thing, but it's not mandated.
They don't pay anything into the system, really.
They don't pay gas tax.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they literally are free to them on the roads, and they're just killing our roads for maintenance purposes. I drove an EV for the first time. I took my daughter to look at colleges in California, and when we went to rent a car, they said, you can have a gas powered car, you can have an EV. If you choose the gas powered car, we're going to charge you more. So I was like, I'll try the EV. I don't care. And then we spent the vast majority of that trip looking for a charging station that would not take 4 hours to charge that car.
Yeah.
And it was just such a pain in the patoot because we weren't anywhere that you could charge overnight because we're staying in hotels and stuff like that. And if you think about it, California has been mandating going to the EV universe and the EV lifestyle for so long, and their charging infrastructure was garbage. I mean, people were lined up in a Target spot, like queued up in their cars, sitting in their cars reading for hours, and they couldn't leave their car and go into the Target because you're not allowed to leave your car at this charging place because as soon as you charge, you got to leave. And so I guess it was just one of the few, what do they call them, supercharged or something, the ones that are fast.
It's like an hour or something.
Yeah, an hour instead of 3.
Which is still a long time. But
that's your life. And you're sitting there in your car.
Yeah.
I just could not wrap my head around what the draw was, I guess, for people that are able to charge overnight in their garage.
Yeah.
That's less intrusive, but it was it wasn't the kind of experience that I would have come home and said, I was wrong about EVs. Like, let's go. I kind of came away with the opposite experience.
Yeah. And so just for people, and myself included, I was trying to learn more about the legislative session this year and every year, I guess. I might have another state congressperson on. But so you're towards the end of the session, right?
We are, thank goodness.
Okay.
So constitutionally, we have to be done June 28th.
For budget reasons, or
Well, when we went to annual sessions, they just put limits on themselves. It's a certain number of days in the session where we can balance a budget, and then it's shorter
okay,
in the year in between. So odd numbered years, we have to balance a budget, and that budget lasts for 2 years. And then in between, we meet. It's supposed to be for technical fixes. And so that's a short session.
gotcha.
And so right now we're in the middle of the long session. And this budget is about $140 billion
Okay,
in taxes and fees and fines and,
everything. Yeah,
all the things, federal money,
right.
all of it. I always think that's for 4.2 million residents in the state of Oregon. That's just so much money.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's what we're doing right now. I spent 3 hours in the Ways and Means, our budget committee this morning. So
Okay,
a couple weeks left.
coming to the end. How's it
Mhm.
feel to be like
Almost done?
yeah? As any congressperson, like how does that?
It is.
It's just a marathon.
I want it to be over. I want to be at the sprint stage where we just focus on budgets, balance the budget, go home.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because this session hasn't served Oregonians very well. I think there's some sessions where you hear about these really big ideas, and legislators, these folks that are politicians are elected to do have the big idea and work together to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
You have sessions like that where something really great comes out of a session. This one, it's just a lot of inconsequential stuff. There's some kind of random legislation and bills that I've been really happy about. We took away the statute of limitations for when someone that's been sexually assaulted as a child
Mm-hmm.
can, pursue their civil remedies moving forward, not retroactively. I'm very happy we're doing that. Like, that feels very focused on justice, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the right thing to do. And then on the other side of it, we're doing kind of union handouts all the time where they're getting special treatment, and they're mandating that people that are in particular industries turn into union shops. And I'm as pro-union as anybody,
Mm-hmm.
but people should choose. You
Yeah.
shouldn't be required to
Yeah, and that
run your business like a union.
wasn't that the Janus case? Wasn't that like the Supreme Court?
Yeah,
The whole thing was
individuals
like you need to be able to choose.
for individuals. Well, and now they're back ending that, and they're making it so that the business can't compete on public projects unless they're unionized.
Okay.
And so because now the individual can go ahead and pull out of the union, they're trying to kind of coerce these entire sectors of businesses to unionize their workforce so that they can even bid on these jobs.
Apply for the
Yeah.
grant.
So
or
if
not
you're
grants,
if you're a big business and you want to build the Rose Quarter, you want to do these huge construction projects, you want to do a project at a university, build a new building. They are putting in not just requirements for how much you pay your workforce, which that's been around a long time, but now they're adding additional requirements that are much more union mandates.
yeah.
So I don't know, that doesn't feel like a big idea.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because obviously one of the things I had on here, we can talk about it too, is I was posting about it this week, because I've been following it, is the bill to give striking workers unemployment, which just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But, I was gonna say about unions, I feel the same way. Like I've been a part of a couple unions here for television, which was basically required, but like I'm not gonna deny the benefits. Like it was a good arrangement at the time, but my complaint here in Oregon is it's just this endless cycle, like you mentioned, of feeding into usually Democratic Congress people.
Yeah.
And like in the unemployment bill, they literally brought that bill
Yeah.
to Oregon, and then it
Mhm.
passed, or
Yeah.
it looks like it's going to pass. But so it's just like I find that cycle problematic and unethical, and I don't know. I would think it'd be illegal, but it just seems crazy that we keep going down this path of.
We're the only state in the nation that opens up unemployment insurance that it's legitimately for people that are actively looking for work,
Mhm.
and hands it over to people that have made the voluntary decision to strike.
Right.
Like
Now,
that is not good policy.
Yeah, and it's I was framing it to people like they are employed, like
They
they're
are,
choosing to
they are,
strike, and
yes,
it's
yeah.
just a distinction that I think people need to hear because it just
Mm-hmm.
and there's so many details about that bill that just drive me crazy. The 26 weeks thing, and
Mm-hmm.
the fact that Oregon, you probably know better than me, allows public unions to strike at all. Is we're one of the few states that do that. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, and we absolutely had amendments to that bill that would have a couple things, right? We said, okay, then public unions shouldn't strike.
Right.
You're an essential worker. We need you. You can't strike.
Hmm.
And that, they didn't adopt that. That didn't become law. And then we also, proposed, well, what if you tightened it up? Make some common sense changes so that it's not abused. None of those adjustments were considered. They really wanted an all or nothing approach to their bill,
Hmm.
and they got it.
Does,
That's what single party control
I was
does.
just gonna say, yeah, like
Yeah.
how does that? Is that's gotta that would just drive me crazy, like having little to no leverage over any of that stuff.
Oh, it's
And
bad.
yeah,
It's bad. There's no sugarcoating it. It's bad for Oregon. It's
yeah,
bad to see up close too.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy that you're in there. One of the reasons I do this show in Portland is like I'm just in the blue bubble, and I just want to
Yeah.
a way at least allow voices to that aren't part of that monolith to like
Hmm.
speak, and because I totally agree. One party rule has not really done service to Oregon very well,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. I had on here like I have been given props recently to the governor a little bit for unlocking it, like the SDC fee waiver thing that's going on here in Portland, and also trying to see what I wrote down here. I don't know, some of the stuff she's doing with housing, civil commitment, but at the same time, like I kind of feel like even before she was governor, she kind of created a lot of these problems. So it's just like,
Well, and that's how I've always felt about her. I've always felt it's a little ironic when she kind of like shakes her fist into the dark of the night and says, why? Why is it like this?
right?
And I'm like, now get up in the morning and look in the mirror, sweetheart. I think that there needs to be some personal responsibility for why we are where we are.
Hmm.
She had a lot of power for a lot of years as speaker, and she's personally responsible for us being the only state in the nation that has legislation that says it's okay to camp on your sidewalks.
Mm,
And so even when the Supreme Court said your local governments can make choices about where people can sleep here
right.
in Oregon, Tina had a bill that said we're going to legalize public camping on
Mm,
public spaces. That's her. And so, I appreciate everything she does that is middle of the road. She has this session in particular around housing supported legislation that I'm glad is moving. There's a bill that requires local governments to process permits faster. So if you don't process it by date certain, it's automatically assumed to be approved.
mm,
They can't drag on permit review for 6 months or a year in front of these local bodies. So that's going to help, for businesses that are like, time is money. That's
right.
going to
Right.
legitimately help. Um, but, excuse me, um, but when it comes to the social service stuff, we find ourselves in this position because of the policies that she supported. In 2019, she was Speaker of the House when they took away the buffer zones for where you can provide methadone and
Okay.
for where you can, engage in harm reduction activities. That buffer zone was intended to protect schools
Hmm.
and daycares, places where you knew there would be children present and
Yeah.
families.
Because if anyone's ever seen a methadone clinic, like I remember years ago up here, I used to live near one, and yeah, you see a lot of activity
There's a
around
lot of
there that you probably
activity.
wouldn't want in it around a
Yeah.
school or some of those other
Yeah,
neighborhoods.
and you think, okay, we do land use that says there's particular areas where different things can happen.
Hmm.
Let's provide that service somewhere that isn't intentionally right by a school or daycare where, kids are going to come and go all the time, walk to school.
Yeah.
And instead, we don't have those protections anymore. And I have met with folks in different parts of Portland and in particular up in Stadium Hood, and they are just living this life where their kids walk to school on these sidewalks that have just been improved for safe routes to schools, and all
Mm,
this money's been spent on it. And the kids are walking over needles and they're seeing, half naked people out of their minds.
mm-hmm.
and it doesn't feel like a safe and welcoming place for them to raise family. Those are choices that our current governor has made and supported over time. And so I am really pleased to see that we're addressing aid and assist. It's really important that we get that figured out. We need to have space for the criminal part of this stuff to be resolved. We need to make space for people to have the civil commitment so that you can get people help. When they're
Yeah,
struggling, they need a place to be
yeah.
helped.
I'm glad that she was supporting him. That I don't know. I talked to a lot of people up here like that law's never going to change, but Oregon has some of the most restrictive
Yeah.
civil commitment laws. And it's just really frustrating. And I had an uncle who's no longer alive who had schizophrenia, so I understand that argument and the debate around it. But it's just like I
Mm.
think Portland at this point, people know that like something needs to change there because there's people walking in the street just about everywhere that are half naked or whatever they're doing. But
And they all need help.
yeah, and it's just designed to because that person has no choice. They have no agency to like get
Mm-hmm.
themselves help most of the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer in that. And I was going to transition to this is a good maybe a good segue, but you mentioned the I don't know if you're talking about the Grants Pass case,
Mm-hmm.
but I had this later in here that I was reading you grew up in Southern Oregon
I
because I
did.
grew up in
I
Grants
did.
Pass,
You did?
but I don't know where you grew
Eagle
up.
Point.
Okay, that's like around Medford, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's outside Medford.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like up until what, high school, and then you
I
got out of.
graduated high school in 1990, so I'll just go ahead and date myself. And
Okay.
then I went to George Fox College
Mm,
in Newburgh up
yeah.
here, and didn't live back down in Southern Oregon again. But my parents were down there until my mom passed away, and now my dad and my brother are in Roseburg.
Okay. Yeah.
So I still consider Roseburg Southern,
Yeah.
not as Southern as
It's just right up the
just
interstate.
yeah,
Yeah.
not Eugene. Everything south of Eugene's Southern for me now.
Okay. um, let's see here. I got so many other
So
things.
Grants Pass.
Yeah, yeah, the cavemen and all that stuff. But after high school, I moved up pretty much immediately moved up here and started working in TV in
Yeah,
Portland.
yeah.
But I still, I don't know. I try not to forget about them. Like I said, that Supreme Court case was a huge, and
Hmm.
they've got their own issues in Southern Oregon.
They do. Yeah, they have real challenges around illegal marijuana grows
right.
and the Grants Pass in particular, the kind of scary human trafficking level crime that happens down there is um, they need more help than they're getting.
Yeah.
They need more help than they're getting. They really, really do have issues down there that are dangerous to the community and certainly to the people that are suffering through it.
Hmm.
So I think that we continue to have challenges in Grants Pass that aren't just homelessness down there.
Yeah. And some people think that that's like when they hear that, they're like, what are you talking about? But yeah, there's there's a lot of like cartel activity and people getting, I think, killed sometimes. And
Yes.
it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it does down there.
I wanted to go to, I don't know if you know Jeff Eager, but I had him on here a
Yeah.
couple times. And the last time I had him on, I tried to have him explain the wildfire map controversy.
Mm.
And he kind of did it, but I know you can probably do it a lot better because you've been
I
spearheading
have been trying to get that map repealed is what
yeah.
I've been working on. Well, so we passed legislation some years back that mapped every tax lot in the state for how risky the landscape is for the potential for fire.
Hmm.
And after that happened, suddenly it became clear that that was being used in a way that was really harming those families whose property might be by a forest or in an area that might be prone
Right.
to fire. And they saw their insurance go up crazy amounts. Suddenly they couldn't sell their property because their property was high risk for wildfire, and it just had all of these unintended consequences for people that had been mapped.
Because yeah, when the state is deeming your property has this risk and that risk, it just changes all that, right?
Changes
Yeah.
everything. And the intent, at least how it was described to us when we were looking at the legislation that year, the intent was for the state to better understand where they should like pre-position apparatus to fight the fire.
Hmm.
And so the pitch to us wasn't, we're going to nickel and dime grandma and grandpa out of their house and we are going to make sure that everybody moves over to I-5 and get them out of this, what they call the wildland urban interface. They didn't say that, but that has been the intended effect. That's how people feel about it. Like, you want to force me out of my community. You don't want people to live in Rogue River, Oregon. You don't want people to live in Grants Pass, Oregon.
Because they're almost in a way deeming it unlivable,
That's what they're,
or
that was the
unsustainable.
effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, of saying this is so unsafe, extreme, high risk, that we are going to disincentivize you to even be here. And the communities felt like you are trying to erase our communities. You're making it impossible for us to stay. That is unacceptable. You cannot you can't take our state and act like people should only live in sidewalk suburbs and urban core.
Right.
It's a beautiful place. It's an amazing place. And people need to be able to make the choices that they want to make for the kind of lives they want to live. And that map was having an impact on that. So it needs to be repealed, not just because it had that effect on individuals, but also because it was not scientifically accurate.
Okay. That's kind of what I wanted to hone in on, because I don't
That's
know
the
much about
issue.
that. And before this, was there just no
There was no map.
map? Okay.
There was no map. And so it was modeling. It wasn't actually looking at the landscape. Like, somebody did not drive around our entire state
Right.
and identify this is truly high risk. I mean, they were putting plots of land in high risk that were actively irrigated fields, all year long. They were constantly wet and growing something.
Right.
And they were saying that's extreme risk. And so
It's kind of like a drive-by, not even really a drive-by evaluation, but like a model-based.
it's like topographical, and then some modeling.
And anytime I hear the word model, my BS detector goes off.
Yes. Yeah, it's a scientist sitting in front of a computer messing about.
Right.
And it just had real consequences for people. And so we are trying to get the map repealed. And there was a law passed saying, insurance companies cannot base insurance rates on these maps. But by then, the cat was out of the bag. I don't know if people still say that, but by then it was too late. And insurance companies had used their own mapping to be able to base those rate increases on. And folks have these crazy insurance rates that we're now not able to go back to what they had been before. Like, it's been very real impacts on people. And so we need the maps to be repealed. The state didn't use it the way they said they would. It's harmed Oregonians. All of that is a big part of why it's got to go.
Yeah, I actually hadn't thought about the sort of urbanization, like pushing people to the urban areas. Like, that seems like it's like almost seems like a crazy kind of thing, but like it does seem like even as a side effect, like that would be a part of what's happening from that map. But,
it felt a little subversive. Like, wait a minute, is this on purpose?
Yeah.
And I'm not the kind of person that second guesses people's intent. I kind of take people at face value. But it felt like entire communities suddenly weren't going to be able to sell their homes and weren't going to be able to afford to live there, because with that designation came a whole bunch of other mandates. And that's the other part of it. So if your individual property had that designation, it meant that if you had an old growth oak tree within 100 feet of your property, you were going to have that tree removed.
Which can be very expensive.
Yeah. And also
in Portland, I know it's like you got to get like
permits.
20 permits. Yeah.
And not only that, in Portland, you're doing everything you can to increase shade areas. Like, they have entire committees dedicated to ensuring you have shaded areas.
Right. I forget what they call it, urban shade.
Yes, they have some.
Yeah,
they have a whole focus on historic trees and the canopy of a tree, and how much shade you're going to get. And you go to the rural parts of the state, and they're doing the opposite. And they're saying, we want a certain buffer around your house, and you can't have landscaping up to this point at your house, and you can't have these kind of trees within this range.
So it's basically just barren around your home.
And it's all justified by this idea of wildfire. But what it does is it changes your experience to live there, and it makes it more expensive. And they want to tell you what kind of siding to put on your house, what kind of roof to put on your house, what kind of windows to put on your house. And all of that is crazy expensive. So it was the designation, it was the ability to sell or not sell, it was the insurance, it was the cost, it was how is it going to change how it feels to live there? Just, it was stacking.
Yeah.
They were stacking these kind of injuries on these communities. And the thing that's hard right now is they're all being held hostage by political games. So we've got the governor that's declared she wants the kicker, which
Right.
is otherwise returned to Oregonians. And she says that it's to fight wildfires, but we need a couple $100 million to fight wildfires, and she wants to take $1 billion of the kicker. So I think she doesn't like the policy, but it also means that she's saying until raise this tax for me or take this money from Oregonians, we're not going to pass the wildfire bill for you. We're not going to repeal these maps.
Hmm.
So they have them like locked up in a committee that they won't allow that committee to have, that to allow that bill to move forward. And
I didn't know that. Yeah,
it's
that's
stuck
crazy.
there. It's stuck there.
Well, I was going to show you this. I don't know if you saw this, came out from the Willamette Week yesterday, but a lot of people were commenting on this because of the kicker thing. Like, I know that the state
Mm,
and the governor have asked for the kicker money back. But I
yeah.
don't know. Have you seen that? This just came out yesterday about there's like $400 million of unspent federal wildfire money from 2020. And a lot of people commenting on there that
Seriously,
about the kicker. They're like, well, why does she need this money if there's like $400 million of wildfire relief that's unspent from the state? And
I have to read this. So that's the other part of this. This is really interesting. So this would be, I'm gonna have to read the article.
yeah, and I don't.
Is it FEMA money?
It's I don't know if it's FEMA, but it's definitely federal of some kind. And I don't know if it's for a specific community.
Oh,
Like, I'd have to. It's a very long article. I'd have to.
at that amount of money, that's statewide guaranteed. I mean, that's a lot. 400 some $1 million. I'm gonna have to read it now.
Yeah, and it's like I'll put the graph on the screen here for people,
Yeah.
but it's like 90% unspent. And the thing that
Mhm.
got to me was like this was from a 2020 wildfire. It's like,
Yeah.
how does that money not?
Okay, that's the other thing about this is wildfire ends up being shared cost. So the federal government always determines how much they're going to help us cover the cost of wildfire.
Right.
But then it takes them a year, 2 years, 3 years,
It's a
4
long
years.
process.
It's a very long process for them to approve the reimbursement of our expenses at a state level. So I'm not super surprised that it's a 2020
Yeah.
federal grant.
And I also know that like a lot of states have a long timeline of getting out federal money like that. Oregon's
Yeah.
not unique necessarily in that
No.
aspect, but it is like I was just shocked to see like what is
And if it's sitting there, why are we even talking about it?
right.
Yeah, use what you've got. Use
It's
the
a,
money you've got.
yeah, and it's a theme here locally in Portland too, where we have these piles of money sitting here, but we can't touch it for it's been earmarked or whatever reason. But then we're in huge budget shortfall, so I just see
Mhm.
this kind of stuff and it drives me crazy. But
I want to know how you feel about how it's going in Portland. Can I ask you a question?
yeah, you can ask me.
Yeah. How do you
Uh,
feel?
I mean, it's an interesting time because like I was really supportive of the new DA. I had him on here before he got elected, and
Mhm.
so I felt like in terms of public safety that was a good step. But then in my opinion, the whole new city council is just a disaster so far. I'm actually going to do
Mm,
a second. I'm doing quarterly like reviews for them, and I have my friend on here, and we go through and rank all the councilors.
I love that.
But the city council, in my opinion, is a mess. They're still like we're literally paying them to figure out their job at this point, and it's
Yeah.
terribly expensive. And
They are learning on the job. It's
yeah,
not pretty.
and so that's like near the bottom. But the county's like doing a little better this year because we got some better commissioners, and they're challenging the chair, which I really don't like the chair JVP, but so that's like a little better, but overall, like it's in the very not good category in the
How do
Portland
you feel
area.
about the mayor?
I do like Keith. He was on here a long time ago, and my like here I'll go through the positives and negatives. I guess like he's sticking to his campaign promises, which is good. He's done a lot of. He's supported like right now they're doing this police defunding, and he's against
Mhm.
that. He's really trying to restore that money.
Mhm.
And I think he's really maintained like a balanced approach to being a mayor. Like he's not really ideological one way or the other, which I think is good.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's using his megaphone as much as he can. It's hard because in this new city government, that's kind of how it is by design. Like he doesn't have a lot of power, but But I think just optically and doing other things, he could be a lot louder with that. And I also think he's one of the only business owners in that arena.
Mhm.
And so I think he needs to be a lot more pro business. But overall, I don't know. I'd give him like a C plus right now, I guess.
Okay. Okay. He's also growing into the job probably as well. I mean,
Yeah,
he's never been elected anything before.
right.
So, you're
It,
seeing, I
it
think,
is.
that too,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah. And I actually hadn't realized, some people point out to me that I didn't know before, last year and everything, that he had tried to get on city council and stuff before and
Oh, I
was
didn't
not
realize
even
that.
like in the top three.
Ranked choice voting.
So yeah, and it's like he just came out of nowhere, and but I think you're right. It's hard when you're just like a business owner to come in and learn
Yeah.
government.
Yeah. It is not the same.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Let's see here. I had a couple more. I wanted to get your thoughts on. Wasn't there? I was pulling up my notes again, but wasn't there a huge education package that either went through or is going through right now?
So we have two things. We have an education budget that just went through the budget committee.
Okay.
And we also have a bill, a Senate bill, I think it's 141, that changes quite a bit about schools. And I think that the intent is that it is accountability for K 12.
Okay.
So,
I think I'm thinking of the budget, which was
so
like several billion.
yep, the
Yeah.
budget is over $1 billion more than last budget. So I think growth was 12%.
Okay.
Overall for the state. And it's still creating cuts for districts across the state
Really?
because of PERS costs. So
Okay.
public employee retirement costs are substantial.
If people don't know, yeah, I talk about it a lot. I've had
Mhm.
economists on here talk, but it is like it comes up so much because it's
Yeah,
expensive for
it's
any
expensive.
government body
Hmm.
paying their employees per like.
And we still have tier one, is what is how they reference the kind of legacy
Right,
employees,
right.
and they're the most expensive. And so it is a big budget, and a good portion of it also comes from the commercial activities tax.
Okay, I actually have never
And
heard of that.
so the commercial activities tax is a tax that was passed a few years ago it's a sales tax, but it's on the business. You don't see it on your receipt most of the time.
Sure.
And it's on commercial activity, just the way it sounds. So it's not on your profits. It's on commercial activity, which is why it's put pharmacies out of business, like businesses that are not that can't control the costs of what comes across their, through their businesses, but it isn't reflective of what their profit is.
Okay,
Those
I'm trying to
guys,
think. What does that mean though? Commercial, because it's
so
not.
yeah,
It's not income and any of that, but it's
it's all the revenues that come through your business. You are
okay.
taxed on the income,
All
the
revenue
revenues that
streams.
come through your business. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And so they've had particular carve outs for businesses that were especially exposed to the fact that they process money. They don't, they hold
Right, I
it.
feel like a transaction
Yeah, more
company or
transaction
something.
focused. But the effect of the commercial activities tax was that it was intended to raise money that was dedicated for schools. And it has reflected the fact that economic activity in the state, how much commercial activity we have in the state, has gone down.
Right.
And so this tax has gone down. But that's part of it. So we have a commercial activities tax, and then we have our regular old income taxes that we pay that funnel into that. And then you've got local property taxes that help pay for that. And so all of that goes into this one big number. And then it gets pushed back out to schools through a formula that's based on attendance. And
Okay.
so schools get their money through a formula that's entirely based on what kind of, butts in seats.
Hmm.
And certain kinds of kids get different money in that formula. So if you're a pregnant student, you get more money than a student that's not pregnant. If you are a student that doesn't yet speak English, you get more money than a student that does.
Wow. So it's
Um,
down to the individual level on many criteria,
well,
like
at
that.
least for purposes of how the school gets the money.
Okay.
But when they get the money, they get it as a big block grant, just a big check,
Okay.
and they can spend it however they want. So even though different schools are weighted in the formula, different students, I'm sorry, are weighted in the formula, once a school gets the money, they
Right.
just get
That makes sense.
a
Yeah. So
payment.
looking at the demographics of each
They're looking at the
district and
demographics of the
gotcha.
districts. And um, so that's gone through Ways and Means. And so schools know what their budgets are going to be for the next 2 years.
Okay. I mean, it's just, yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to ask about it, because I'm post a lot about how just, it just seems like we just spend more and more, and then we're like 49th,
Oh,
50th ranked
no
performance and all that stuff.
joke.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem, I mean, we have been throwing good money after bad for years for schools,
Yeah.
and we are worst in the nation for outcomes. We are the last state in the nation that still hasn't recovered for testing scores from COVID era.
Mm-hmm.
How is that possible? How is
Yeah.
that?
Well, I know I would say, at least in the Portland area, there was literally like 2 years of lockdown
Yeah.
schools, and
And then you guys had a huge strike.
yeah, over a month
Hmm.
long strike, which drive me crazy too. It's just I feel so bad for kids. There's like a whole generation of kids that just basically didn't have
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 years of education. It's just crazy.
Hmm. Well, and the other thing that's created is we are worst in the nation for absenteeism, just
Right.
except for Washington, D.C. They're a little worse than us. And so I think COVID and the shutdowns created kind of a culture of you don't have to be in school.
Yeah.
And now we're
Absolutely.
seeing it.
Yeah, and it's funny because PPS now is just finally talking about the value of presence for their own employees.
Hmm.
But I'll put it up here too. I posted a thing a while back about, at least with PPS, absenteeism for teachers was also one of the
I saw
highest.
that article. I was so
And
surprised.
it's like, so the kids and the teachers, neither one of them are like
Yeah.
expected to really show up. And of
Yeah.
course, you're going to have
Yeah. And
horrible
we all
outcomes.
know what it's like to have a substitute teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
They
just,
just pull the TV out, and
they do just pull
that's
the
what they
teeth
did
out.
for me. But I don't know.
And
Yeah.
I think they do. I think they still do, only now they're like iPads.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. I wanted to, we were talking about the sports stuff, the fairness stuff earlier. Half of this question is kind of like that, but me and Jeff Eager talked a little bit about this, but I was going to ask, do you think, like, are there Oregon laws on the books that are just straight up in violation of Title IX or Title VI of the Civil Rights Act?
well, I feel like there absolutely are.
Okay.
And I think OSAA in particular is flouting Title IX right now. Oregon all the time is doing stuff that is affirmatively either unconstitutional. I mean, and there's no one to hold them accountable.
Mhm.
The courts in Oregon have been handpicked and appointed by Democrat governors for almost 40 years
So all the state level Supreme Court stuff would just
for us.
not go anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, for us
Yeah.
anyway. I mean, once you get into the federal issues, we stand a chance.
Right.
But at least here in Oregon, if we're talking about moving through our process first and then moving up, we absolutely do not have a legitimate judicial branch. Our judges, I don't know if you ever track any of this stuff, but our judges will routinely retire right before the end of their term, and then the governor appoints that person, and then that person runs unopposed.
Okay.
So our judges are technically elected, but it doesn't ever work out that way. It's an anomaly to have someone run against anyone.
And is that why on the ballot you'll just see one?
That's why.
Okay.
They offer each other some weird professional courtesy where they don't run against each other. And they step down so that the governor can have the ability to appoint them. And so that is the process. That's the structure. And it's a crap system. It's rigged. It's a garbage system.
Doesn't seem very like part of democracy, but
But we need that. We need the judicial branch to work.
right.
I mean, it's
Like any government.
like any,
Yeah.
right? Like you need the press to be functioning. You need the legislative branch to work. You need the executive branch and the administration of government to work. You need the judicial branch to work.
Yeah.
And to have it be rigged in a way that that it's just going to be political is how, if somebody's doing something unconstitutional one way or another, they look the other way. They do not hold their own folks accountable.
Yeah, and I know, I just thought of it. I didn't actually have this on here, but I know a lot of people have been talking recently about the ability to appoint for, what am I saying, federal senator, like.
Oh yeah, that bill
right?
just crossed. Yeah.
And it sounds like that'll probably happen, right? Or
Yeah, so this is interesting politics too. I don't like that bill, obviously.
yeah,
I don't think that the governor should appoint our senator.
let's just elect them, right? Like,
Let's just elect them. We've always done it that way.
right.
And I mean, we're talking about waiting, 60 days, 90 days. That's okay to get the right person that we choose,
Right.
rather than having another appointment that then is the incumbent. Like, no, don't do
Yeah,
that.
and at that point you have a clear advantage.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just funny. I was thinking because I think I've told this on the show before, but I remember I was working at KGW when Jeff Merkley was debating Gordon Smith. Am I saying it?
Oh,
Gordon
that
Smith?
would have been so interesting.
And I was like, there's no way this guy, because Jeff Merkley came in and he was like sweating already before the debate even started. And I was like, there's no way this guy's going to win. And of course he did. And he's been there ever since. But
What was that like?
I mean, I was a young
Young pup.
person at the time. I didn't really know what was, I don't know. I was just fascinated with everything that was happening.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. People will probably give me hate for this, but I'm like, can we please at least try to have like somebody from a different party as a senator again? Like it's just
Yeah.
been years of those two, and I think yeah, if that thing makes it through and the governor's able to appoint people rather than elect them,
It's not great.
it's just not good for
It's not
anything.
good.
Yeah.
But the other funny part about that, I don't know if you saw this or not, but all the major Democrats like reserved the websites of
Oh,
whatever their name was for
sure.
Senate,
Yes, I did see. Yeah,
which cracks me up. I mean,
they're
let the feeding frenzy
they're getting
begin.
it ready. Yeah, for
They're getting it ready for the
appointments.
appointment.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, it's funny. I did see that, and I actually didn't even think about. I didn't make the connection. I think I was thinking of something else, but I saw yeah, all the domains were registered,
Yeah.
which makes sense. But let's see here. I had a couple more. Could you explain to people? All I wrote on here. There's some measure going through to limit the number of bills.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, right now, as legislators, we can take any idea from anywhere. Constituent ideas,
Oh,
neighborhood associations, interests, like you name it.
right.
And they can come to legislators and say, we really need to fix this. Like, this is so broken. Can we just do something about this? And then we are required to use an internal group called Legislative Council. They're the legislators. There are attorneys. They're the
Right.
attorney for the branch. They're not my personal attorney, but they do work for the Legislative Assembly. They have to draft those bills. They have to write the laws that we consider and debate in committee and then pass on the floor.
Just to kind of format it for
Yep.
legal reasons. Or,
Yeah,
yeah.
they do the legalese
Hmm.
and make sure that it is consistent with what Oregon statutes require. And so, this idea that we're going to limit the number of bills that we can take to them to be drafted limits everybody.
Right.
Limits you, limits me. It
Wherever they're coming from.
Wherever they're coming from. You could only have 25 ideas
Is that the number?
per legislator.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, it's the other crappy thing about single party control is they give themselves all kinds of carve outs.
Hmm.
And so, committees can have exceptions and committees can have their own bills and the governor can have, I don't know how many they gave the governor, 400, some crazy number. The agencies get a crazy number of bills.
So their numbers are
huge.
up here. And
Yeah. The most successful legislator right now in the Capitol is the governor. She's passed more bills than
Really?
anybody else
Okay.
because her agencies submit
Right.
ideas.
And of course, those are just going to
they
sail
fly
through usually. Yeah.
Yeah, same party. They don't really, provide scrutiny. They say, hey, if Oregon Health Authority needs another $20 million and carte blanche to be able to do whatever they want, here's our blank check. And you can tell I'm not the biggest fan of the Oregon Health Authority, but so
I've never talked to anyone who really is.
I know, but that legislation, from my perspective, just gives more control and more power again to the folks that already have power in their hands.
Sure.
And takes it away from the people.
It's just cementing the division or the one partiness that we already have.
Yeah, it just consolidates power even further.
Yeah.
And we already have a speaker that creates committees, appoints the membership in the committees, Republican and Democrat, identifies who the chair is, chooses the vice chair, decides what committees bills go to, decides, when the committees shut down, what they can do, what bills they can hear. Like there's a ton of power already in the Democrats that run the House and the Senate in Salem. This gives them exponentially more because now instead of just being in charge of logistics, they're in charge of ideas. Like they are able to say, you only get this many ideas. And
so you can just shut it down.
Why?
Yeah.
Why do that? Like they can, if I propose 10 bills, great. If I propose 100 bills, great. They can still hear none of them.
Yeah, so
They
it still has to.
already
They still got to work their way through the process anyway.
Yeah,
So
and they control every bit of that.
yeah.
So why do they want to prevent me from saying to my constituents, this is my vision for the future? Like, this is what I would do about this problem. Like, think about it this way. If I don't have access to drafting, then I can't engage in this marketplace of ideas in a credible way
Yeah.
and say, this is how I'd solve this problem. I see that same problem you do, but I'd solve it differently. So take the transportation bill we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats have a bill. Their bill's going to raise that $2 billion in taxes. If I had run out of drafting requests, how am I going to get my ideas that don't raise taxes out in the public and say, well, take a look at it, like tear it apart. Tell me if you think it's garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you don't like. But I want to have a conversation about how we solve problems together. And if they limit my ability to do that, you just see theirs because they've given themselves loopholes. They've given themselves carve outs and they haven't given me any.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it also seems I was thinking there was a similar local issue here that was kind of legally deemed unconstitutional, but I was thinking it seems unconstitutional in the sense that because whoever is trying to pass something, if you've already hit your cap on this,
Yeah.
and you had a constituent come to you and say, "Hey, I got this great idea for a bill,"
Yeah.
they're already shut out of that process.
They're done.
Right?
They're done.
So
if there were 24 constituents or 25 constituents in line in front of them,
right.
when they're 26, they're done.
That just seems blatantly unconstitutional to me. But I don't know about state, but it just in general that seems.
Well, we have rules that we kind of govern what we do. So we adopt rules for how we run session.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's interesting is here's the Constitution. This is the ultimate, this is the ultimate standard.
Mm-hmm.
The rules that we govern ourselves by are right below the Constitution. They are above Oregon law.
Okay.
So the rules that we set for ourselves have more standing and more impact and more influence than Oregon's laws do.
Wow.
They're only beneath the Constitution. And so
state constitution or
state.
Okay.
State. And so for those purposes, as long as somebody could legitimately say, we're governing ourselves, our attorneys say, well, our Supreme Court defers to your rules for how you govern yourselves. They don't intervene because you're a separate branch of government. So they won't say that's unconstitutional.
Interesting.
Yeah. They'll say that's how you've chosen to organize. You're a different branch of government. Go ahead and organize however you want. Limit yourselves if you want. And so again, it shuts out people. It has the potential to shut out people.
Yeah, just in terms of representation, it seems like that's not really legal. But I never heard that about. So they basically defer to those session rules.
Little known random fact.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Man, let me see here if I had any other. Are there any other stuff like serious stuff like this that you want to talk about before I get into my funny questions?
I love funny questions. I've had a lot of serious today.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been a long week. Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about your Northwest story? We talked a little bit about. I would just ask people because the show's called Northwest Fresh, like what your story is. Obviously, you grew up in Southern Oregon.
I did.
And what point were you like, I want to get into politics? It was after you went to George Fox, and
I was gonna say I almost was kind of casual about my answer to that because I don't know yet that I've made a decision to get into politics in some ways.
Yeah.
I really believe in just making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's probably a shared value no matter what you do for a life. And this just happens to be the way I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So I think you're kind of a crazy person a little bit if you say, I want to get into politics for politics.
Right.
And so I want to do this because I really believe you got to try to change how the story ends. Mm-hmm. You got to do what you can to make things better where you're at. And so that is how I found my way here. But I was born in Klamath Falls. And
okay. That's also funny because I was born in Lakeview. You know where that is?
Of course I know where Lakeview is. I love Lakeview.
Yeah, my dad still lives there, yeah.
There's one of my favorite parade, don't tell Hillsborough this, but my favorite parade from the governor's race was the Lakeview parade.
Really?
So fun.
I've never been to their parades, but I bet
you
that's cool.
You gotta do it. It was like side by sides and you just drive around and have drinks as you were going through the parade. People were just enjoying themselves.
Because there's really only like 5 or 6 streets in Lakeview,
Yeah, it is a good time.
Yeah.
It is a good time. So I was born in Klamath. My parents were raised there, like high school sweethearts. So, family, lots of family. My aunt and uncle still raise alfalfa out there and cattle, and just that's family for me. But my mom had 4 brothers. She was the only girl. And when I was growing up, everybody talked politics and they complained about everything. And they complained about everybody. It was before podcasts, right?
Sure.
And so you'd sit
Yeah.
outside in the summertime under the lilac, lilacs in the spring, and just listen to these folks just like lambast everybody. The Republicans, the Democrats, they're all just out for their own, and they don't even care. And I was fascinated by it. I'm a little kid that's not in the house with my mom and my grandma, like gossiping about all the things. I'm like outside listening to my uncles talk business and politics and military service and all this stuff. And it somehow just like got in my brain that what politicians do, whether it's in DC or whether it was in City Hall there in, Merrill, where my parents were raised, it affects us. It affects all of us. I mean, not everybody pays attention, not everybody knows it, but they all have to live with the consequences of what people that are elected, what choices they make, and whether or not our lives are expensive, and whether we feel free, whether we feel optimistic. Some of those things, like the environment that they create or that they shape, affects that. And so that was super young. I was just curious about it. And then after I graduated college, I decided I just want to see for myself. Like, are these people absolutely rotten?
Right.
Like, are they bad people? And so I was like the world's shortest resume, and I just delivered it to all the new legislators in our state capitol to just try to work there for one session to see what it's about. And I ended up working there for 8 years and becoming the chief of staff to the majority leader and the speaker of the house. And I just kind of moved up the ranks. And it was such an interesting time. We had Republican majorities in the House and the Senate. We had John Kitzhaber in the governor's office for the 8 years I was there. It was divided control. So my experience was divided government.
A little more balanced than today.
Yeah. So that's how I think of it. Is he would say no, we would say no, he would say yes, we would say yes. Like there was some version of balance that just had to happen with different perspectives. And I really loved the opportunity to be a part of that work and to be able to, through my 20s, just kind of see behind the curtain. And I absolutely came away from that thinking my parents were both right and wrong, right? Like my uncles were both right and wrong. There were really great people that were legitimately trying.
Yeah.
And then there were just people that were not be people you'd want to be served by. So I think it looks like any other business place. It looks like any other workplace where you're just going to have a mix. But the thing about politics is whoever you are, whatever you're really about, you can't hide it in politics. Like it's going to be clear. It's because it's such a pressure cooker.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, because I worked in the media, like that's one piece of it, but just the political system and everything, like that stuff will come out.
It bubbles up.
Right.
Like you think that you are like putting on a good, face here, but how you act and how you vote and what you say and what you do and how you treat people, all that stuff,
right?
You can't hide.
It triangulates really who you are.
It triangulates who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's really positive because it means voters have the chance to like throw out the bad apples.
Yeah.
And the recall happens every time that there's a chance to vote. And I always say we don't need term limits. We need voters that care enough to pay attention. And then we have the opportunity to have accountability. And, every time I've done anything that's ever been controversial, and maybe it's been more than once, I've said, it's fine. Like my voters will let me know.
Right.
Like people will have the chance to weigh in, and I'll be accountable to them willingly. And I'll say, I'm going to be super honest about what I'm about and what my why, and choose. Like that's the beauty of this system is if people are willing to engage, then we have this really great opportunity to be well served by our process.
Yeah, no, that's a great story, and because I did have on here, I was gonna say something about the governor's race because I just had such tremendous respect for you, and I still feel like even today, you're just like what you just said is so true. Like I've never seen you as somebody who's putting on a persona or a facade or anything,
Right.
and that just maybe that is rare in certainly national politics, but it just seems even rare in local politics. So I just appreciate that about you, and um,
I am just not a good actor. I think that's really what it comes down to.
could be. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
But I just, I had on here too, like, I don't know. I hope you or somebody like you runs again because um, I have this weird theory that in Oregon specifically, you almost have to be a woman to like get to that position.
Do you think that?
And I know that's a hot
How
take
does that
probably,
how
but
does that feel for you?
like in the local PPS election, it was like all women that
Yeah.
won.
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, it makes me feel a little, it's a little sexist, I guess, but it's just interesting. And I feel like if there's ever a chance for anyone who's not a Democrat to be governor, it'd have to be somebody like you who's just like
Yeah.
pretty down the middle. And like you said,
Mhm.
you're not really putting on a persona. And I think I think
Yeah.
it could work. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but
Well, I obviously didn't think you were crazy because I took a run at it once,
right.
right? So
Yeah.
I think that, I think you have to be optimistic enough,
Yeah.
and you have to be um passionate enough. Like, you got to really want to do the work.
Hmm.
Because asking people to place their trust in you and give you the ability to make those decisions, like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so,
When
yeah.
I just like you how much you're kind of outspoken about being super local because I talk about it on here all the time about like
Yeah.
if you guys want to see change, it starts at the local level. Like I
Agreed.
know you're all focused on the national stuff, but
Yeah.
so much of what is in your daily life is county, state, city, all
Mhm.
that stuff. So
And I tell people all the time, um, this is where we live.
yeah.
Like, this is our place. Like, let's take care of it.
Hmm.
And and I think the more that we focus on someplace other than here, we forget that we're neighbors,
Yeah.
and we forget that we know more about, what kind of drink we might have together, or
Hmm.
where our favorite pizza place is, or, where our kids like to go to the park or whatever. Like, there's the normal stuff for in people's lives. You should always know more personal stuff about your neighbors than politics.
That's a good point. Yeah.
If you want to have a real working relationship with people,
Yeah.
like, politics should be about the last thing you know about people. And I think I think that would reflect a local focus. Like,
Yeah.
when you know politics first, I think that is when we're really focused on national.
That's a good point. I've actually never heard anyone put it that way, but it's like I talk about it a lot up here, just in places I've worked in Portland. Politics is like the first thing, even in a workplace, that comes up, and it's like
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be that way. I try to be, at my age now, just like you can talk about a million other things
Yeah.
and that would never come up, but it's just like
Mhm.
such an insistence on the division, the kind of times we're in. But I think you were totally right about that. And yeah, I don't know about the the governor thing. It's interesting you brought up Kit Supper because I made a bunch of comedy sketches about him when his whole scandal was going on,
Oh,
and
right.
like OPB put one of them on and stuff. And I always felt like maybe that was the last dude governor we'll have, but
Oh,
like I always have a soft spot for him, even I don't know. I don't agree with him on everything, but it just seems so trivial now. I don't know. I guess
he's kind of a tragic character now, a little
yeah,
bit. And he
that's what I
really was
mean.
kind of pushed out by the ladies.
Yeah,
I mean, there was a particular approach to that.
yeah. I thought there was something else I was gonna say, but I forgot. All right, I'll get into these. Let's see here. We'll start off with the classic. Do you like country or smooth peanut butter? Or maybe you don't like peanut butter.
I like smooth,
Okay.
and I do like peanut butter.
Do you like the oil, the stir or the no stir?
Stir.
You like the stir kind?
I
Okay.
do.
That's the
Hmm.
old like organic kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I
Yeah.
appreciate you don't like that. Is it palm oil?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
I think so.
It's a pretty horrible industry when you look
Yeah.
at it. But,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's not go too deep there.
yeah. Do you have a favorite type of French fry? Do you like crinkle cut, curly cut, waffle fries?
Sweet potato.
Sweet potato. Okay.
Hmm.
Let's say you're getting ice cream somewhere. Do you go waffle cone, regular cone, cup?
Oh, sugar.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what flavor are you putting in there?
Chocolate peanut butter.
That's the go-to.
My go-to. Yes.
Okay.
Something has to have that chunky chocolate and probably some peanut butter.
Okay.
Hmm.
Are you the type of person that'll sample with the little wooden spoon?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, I
I
will.
can't bring myself to do it. I feel bad, but
Really? Oh, so here's the
know.
thing about that is I will do it thinking I'm going to try something different
Yeah.
because I want to try something different. No, I never do.
And it never,
No,
the branch out doesn't happen.
I do not branch out.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Let's see here. Do you leave your butter out? You put it in the fridge.
Oh, I put it in the fridge. My daughter takes it out.
Okay. It's a push
It's a
and
battle.
pull.
It's a battle. Yeah.
Let's see here. Do you use an alarm?
I do. Yes.
Phone or?
Phone.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you wake up, like, do you need it or, like, I wake up even with the alarm.
I wake up, but right before the alarm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the alarm makes me feel better.
It does.
Yeah.
It's
Just
a
in
peace of
case.
mind thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which piece of fruit do you think you could throw the farthest?
Good
If you
question.
chucked it
I'm
across.
going to say mandarin.
Okay. I'm trying to think. Is that a regular orange or is that different?
It's a smaller.
Smaller. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I got maybe one or two more.
I want to know which piece of fruit you can throw the farthest. Like, what do people say to that?
I've actually haven't
Banana
asked
would
that
be
one in a
impossible.
while, but I always say banana. And I
Banana
know
would
that
be
sounds
very hard,
ridiculous.
yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
I feel like there's some magical force to it that'll keep
Okay.
it going. You know?
Okay. I like that. There's maybe some science there.
I don't know. I ask this to a lot of elected people, but they usually are like, I don't know. But if you were forced to or had the opportunity to run a big brand or company, is there one you'd want to run?
Oh, interesting. Gosh, that is such a great question.
And you don't have, I mean, if you can't think of anything, it's fine.
Well, I was going to say, I want to do the thing where I choose something homegrown in Oregon. So
Kettle chips?
I was going to say,
I don't really like kettle chips. To be
maybe
honest.
like a winery. You know what I mean?
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, well, Valley Vineyards, something, sort of Oregon-y like
That'd be
that.
cool.
Mhm.
Okay. I wanted to give you a chance. I always ask people, and I wanted this specific to District 51,
Okay.
but it
let's
could be
hear it.
anywhere in Oregon. Is there like do you have a good meal you want to shout out, a restaurant or just a local business?
So I have in my district a little creamery
Mhm.
that I love, and it's TMK Creamery.
Okay.
It's ice cream, cheese, and I think they make an alcoholic beverage out of their cheese. That's
Oh,
super interesting.
sounds good.
Yeah, so unexpected.
Yeah.
Little tours with the cows. And so, yeah, that's local. And I also have a fantastic winery called Christopher Bridge
Okay.
that's very small, like don't even say tasting room. It's really like a back porch.
Yeah.
And it's just terrific. So
Okay.
lots of good stuff in the
Yeah,
district.
I'll put links to those in there.
Mhm.
Cool. Yeah. I would. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you're. When is your next election, by the way? I always just ask people. I always
yeah,
give-
November.
Is it this November?
The House, yeah, the House runs every 2 years. And
Gotcha.
yeah, so no matter what I do, I have to run this November.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. I was just it end with like if people want to donate and all that stuff, but I don't know if.
Yeah, they can't. I'm still in
Okay,
session.
okay,
But very
gotcha.
kind of you to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. I'll put your socials and stuff in here. But yeah, thanks so much for coming today. This was a lot of fun.
super fun.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
You're always welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you in person.